So what we're going to do in this video today is we're going to talk about the biggest problem that I see with most golfers that happens in the golf swing. This swing mistake has an effect on pretty much all of your inconsistencies. Whether you're somebody who struggles with contact, whether you're somebody who struggles with accuracy, whatever it might be, you'll see as this video unravels the reason why you need to stop making this common mistake. Now, when I meet a student, I will often sort of do an analysis. So I'll sort of tell them what's happening, and then we start asking questions. I start asking them, why do I think these sort of things are happening? And it's often quite similar. It's a similar narrative that they're telling themselves. Most golfers are quite accustomed to the idea of, right, I'm just going to turn in the backswing position, I'm going to straighten my trail leg, I'm going to get my back to the target, I'm going to keep my head on the back of the golf ball, and I'm going to just feel like I'm swinging, around my body. Now, that might seem okay, right, in terms of just very simple, basic advice. But the problem is it's just going to really hinder your ability to do lots of things. See, what happens is if we move too much this way, my head moves off the ball, okay, so my upper body moves too much over towards my trail leg. What is also happening now is it's impossible for me to keep my arms straight because we need an element of extension to do that. So my arms can only elevate so far, which means my arms will bend. Now, the other problem is that when I move this way and I just rotate, so the way that the pelvis moves massively to the left. So if I kind of drew a line vertically through my lead ankle line here, I'm already on my low point line, which basically means I can't move left to start my downswing sequence, so I have to throw my arms at it. And as if that doesn't sound bad enough, well then, if we look at it from the side-on perspective and we drew a line at the back of my hips, what also happens when we move like this is we lose hip depth, which basically means I'm getting closer towards the golf ball, which again in turn means I'm going to have to throw my arms at the back of the ball. So the simple notion of just rotating might seem nice and easy and it kind of makes you feel good about the golf swing, but the reality is it's lacking a little bit of information. So there's another part of the swing that you need to learn. Rotation is one of them. So if I sort of imagined I was sort of just rotating around my spine here, so my sort of pelvis is rotating as well. Rotation obviously exists, but what it needs to be accompanied by is an element of linear motion. Now, linear motion basically means we're going to allow the pelvis to move slightly to the right and slightly to the left. Now, I say the term slightly because that's true, but you've got to bear in mind, if you're somebody who has this type of trait where you just rotate, a couple of inches towards your right-hand side is going to feel like quite a big move. Now, immediately, there'll be lots of you that will have a big sort of cross going through your head going, no, that's swaying and sliding. Kind of. We do need the term sway and slide in the golf swing. We particularly need it in the through swing because it helps us produce an extension to get the arms through. And we also need it to a degree in the backswing position to, again, stop the bad habits that I've kind of documented previously. But the term sway or slide, well, that basically means if you were to draw a line vertically on the outside part of your lead ankle, if your hip joints surpass that line, that would be a sway. That's quite rare. I do meet some golfers that have a habit of swaying, but not that many that would move to this sort of point. You've got this boundary in between your ankle line that you can keep yourself within. So obviously that means you're going to be able to move a few inches to the right and equally a few inches towards the left-hand side. So let's sort of just break down what you're supposed to be doing and for the reasons exactly why. But what I'll do is I'll use one of my favourite drills. Okay, so one of the things that I often do with most of my golf lessons is help golfers understand the importance of the trail leg and how to interact correctly with the floor. The reason why is if we can keep the backswing simple, it'll make the downswing simpler and possibly materialise much more naturally. I often go to a foot wedge. Some of you will ask questions about where to get one of these. This actual company who provided me this one, the Wedge Pro, I'm not sure whether if you're watching this in the US, whether you can get this item, which is why I'm not massively advertising it on their behalf. What I tend to say to most students is you can go on Amazon, go and order yourself a foot wedge. Callaway Golf do a foot wedge. You can buy them. Lots of my students have purchased them for uses in yoga and stuff, so yoga foot wedge. But like I say, it might be something I'll look at helping source in the future. But the idea that I'm basically doing is once your foot is positioned like so, you want to kind of imagine you're sort of using this platform like a sprinter in the blocks. You would sort of, if you're a sprinter in the blocks, you'd be pushing into it. You wouldn't sort of move over it. And that's kind of the same sort of concept that we're going to go for. We're going to try and keep our head still, allow the pelvis to sort of feel like it's pushing this way in towards the ground, as opposed to necessarily sort of, like I say, just rotating quite simply over it. So you're looking for a couple of things. Put your hands across your shoulders, keep your head pretty still. And what I want you to do is I want you to try and keep that trail leg flexed as you sort of get the feeling of allowing the pelvis to move slightly towards your right side or your trail side as you trigger a rotation. So you end up demonstrating a motion which would look similar to this. Now, if we reintroduce that vertical line over my lead ankle, can we see now the way that this position, I can elevate my arms up as opposed to this, more this, And 2, as opposed to going back to this, I'm stuck. Whilst now I can shift my weight to the left as I trigger rotation. So if you imagine that line now represents, say, like a wall, and I'm going to move into the wall, you can imagine how much more powerful this is going to be than somebody who's in this type of position. So again, it's absolutely vital that I personally think if you can learn how to move your lower body correctly in this capacity, you're going to find this part of the golf swing so much easier, which, like I said at the beginning of the video, will lend itself to better ball striking, easier to get the club face square, and equally much more distance. So again, the reason why I wanted to create this video is because it is one of the most biggest common problems that I tend to see with golfers who are struggling for all of the above. And I think if you can learn how to rotate correctly in the backswing position, what it will do is, even if it doesn't immediately mean that you end up sequencing the perfect downswing, inevitably what it will do is it will give you the capacity to work on that in the foreseeable future. So take your time, think about that backswing position, try to keep that idea of your head stays still, but you're allowing your pelvis to move into that leg. Entertain the idea of using a foot wedge, or at least some sort of platform that you feel like you can push into to build a better interaction with the ground, and you will start to feel that rotation and movement through the ball is just going to be way, way easier once you get that backswing sorted out. See you soon.